Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Impact Dynamics Live for this Thursday night, reloading night, of course, on Thursday. Almost there for the weekend. One day to go. G'day to the guys in the chat. G'day, Craig and Steve. What's happening, Charles and Brad and Andrew and Paul and another Steve. Oh, fantastic. There is talk in the chat of going shooting this weekend. I look forward to hearing about those stories. There's a few places around that are able to, which is wonderful news. So we look forward to hearing some stories about that happening. We're not quite there yet with our club, but not far off, and we haven't got a range day booked anyway to the 20th. So hopefully for our first actual calendared range day, we are good to go. Fingers crossed. What have I've got nothing on my paper. I don't even know why I'm looking at it. Let's get rid of that. What I can tell you tonight, of course, is reloading night. Plushy is back. And his band all ginger related songs. So he's back to talk about reloading and provide some information about load development, projectile selection, that sort of thing. So we'll get into that. If you've got questions, hit us up. Any advice, hit us up. All that sort of stuff. Tomorrow night, Luke McKenny joins us for a chat. Luke is probably fair to say the most successful PRS shooter in Australia, having won I think more matches than anyone else here, and having been the current reigning champion because 2020 season hasn't really kicked off. So he won last year, and he's a very good competitor, and is going to talk about what happened from 2018 where he placed fifth and then ended up winning or fairly convincingly dominating 2019, and then what changed for him to provide you guys some tips. So we're talking mindset, talking game plans, talking goals, all that sort of stuff. Fantastic. Started getting tagged in some more Team Impact stuff today, which is fantastic to see. One of my goals is a little bit perhaps longer term, but one of my goals is to boost the Long Gun Project, which is Ben's channel. So if you haven't seen Ben Jarrett's channel, you definitely need to. In fact, I'm going to stick this up here just to remind you that you need to subscribe to the Long Gun Project. So please do that. Even now is fine. We won't get anything too serious. Even if you go over there and subscribe and then come on back, that'd be great. Or you might get distracted and stay there for the next 3 hours. Either way, that's fine by me. So the Long Gun Project, make sure you go over there, subscribe. I did put a post up today, and then Ben's like, "Oh, why are we getting all these new subscribers?" I'm like, "Well, that's the idea, isn't it?" So anyway, that's the plan. That's what we're doing. Head on over there and get underway. Now, tonight's sponsor is actually going to be incorporated into the show a little bit because we've got some product placement happening. Not paid product placement, but product placement. So, but it's like I could show you now, and you'd be like, "Okay, that's cool." But when we probably will end up talking about this sort of stuff anyway with load development, and so it's really relevant then. So I'll show you then. So sit tight. I know you're all waiting for the big announcement of the sponsor of the show, like you couldn't guess, but we'll just have to hold on to it. So who else has joined us tonight? Anthony's in the house. Butters is here. Hello, Butters. Awesome to have you. Plushy's in the chat. Oh, that's good. He's keeping busy. Scott, Ian and Warwick, all sorts of names floating about, and a bunch of guys joining us tonight. If it's your first time, welcome aboard. If it's not your first time, you know what you're in for. Good luck. All right, let's get him on the show. He's been on the show before a couple of times. Dude knows a stack about reloading, has competed in all sorts of types of rifle competition, and generally does very, very well. And he's currently our leading champion at our club, and of course he would have been the leading champion at PRS if we'd been out shooting matches. Isn't that right, Plushy?
Absolutely, Rusty.
I love the confidence. I love the confidence. We'll notice we've still got the recommendation to subscribe to the Long Gun Project just up on the screen now. So anyway, that's the way. Oh, yeah, there's some feedback. Scott's saying, sorry, I'm just stealing your thunder here, Plushy, but Scott's saying he watched Ben talk about choosing the wrong gun. Where it got renamed the Wrong Gun Project. So anyway, that's. I
recall shooting with Ben at the Monado Meltdown when he ran his 300 Win Mag. I was squatted with him. That was fun for him.
Yeah, for him, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Particularly shooting out of those barrels.
Oh, that's right. That would have been painful. That was painful. The best of times, those things at 2 to 3. Anyway, that's we've learnt that lesson, haven't we? All right, Plushy, tonight, bullet selection, load development, all that sort of stuff. Where do we start? Because that's a minefield. There's a lot going on there.
It's a it's a really good question, Rusty, and it's something you should definitely consider before you buy any projectiles or anything like that.
Mm.
You need to know, for me, what you want to do with them,
Hmm.
how far you want to shoot, so intended purpose and the approximate distance you think you want to be shooting. That's really going to affect whether you need to go something that's really heavy and high BC, or maybe you can run something a little bit lighter, a little bit less recoil, shoots a little bit flatter.
Hmm.
If you may be shooting some shorter distances, so it's really, really important for me to know what you're going to do with it, and that's your first choice. I'll tend to grab some data and punch it into one of the ballistic programs.
Hmm.
And try and figure out an expected muzzle velocity, and then throw some data in and see what it looks like. And I start sifting through the data and pick what's going to work best for me.
Fantastic. So I guess that's the thing is there are so many there's so many options for projectiles, and it really comes down to what you're demanding from your projectile and what you need it to do, both in ballistics in terms of getting to target, and then also what happens when it hits your target, be it paper, steel, or flesh. These things act differently, and also even if you're hunting, depends on the game you're hunting because they will perform differently beyond just going in and opening up. Sometimes you need that. Sometimes you need them to blow up. No, sometimes you need them to penetrate. All sorts of different challenges.
Yeah, completely agree, mate. Yeah, that's a big decision you need to make straight off the bat.
Mm.
Generally, target projectiles aren't really suitable for hunting. There's always exceptions to the rule, and vice versa. Hunting projectiles aren't necessarily suited to target shooting. So
Yeah.
that's probably the first decision you really want to make.
I think we've seen probably in recent years a convergence of those two, though, that more and more hunting projectiles are actually it usually was that they were designed in such a way that they weren't super great for longer range or for really consistent work, but they were great for opening up. But now a lot of projectiles will actually do both tasks exceptionally well.
You, Yeah, you're 100% right, mate. Actually, something like the Burger, not the Burger, sorry, the Hornady, the ELDX, you probably could shoot a match with those quite successfully, and you wouldn't notice much of a difference between those and the ELDMs.
Yeah, plenty of guys do shoot the
Yeah,
143 LDXs, for example. Yeah, no, absolutely. And so you're talking about running some numbers on ballistics, and is that for deciding sort of what weight area you would be looking at?
absolutely. I made the decision recently to drop down to a 6 mil Creed, and I ran the numbers of running a 105 grain sort of range projectile versus maybe a 115,
Mhm.
and I made the decision that over traditionally 500 meters and less that we shoot, there is some longer ranges, but traditionally 500 meters and under, there's no advantage to shooting the 115 grain over the 105 except a bit more felt recoil.
Mhm.
So there was almost nothing in the numbers there until you start to really stretch the legs out. So you start to see some advantage running the heavier projectile.
Mhm. Absolutely. Now you've been crunching some numbers on some examples there. What have you come up with?
Yeah, I did actually. So I punched the numbers for 6.5 Kriegs. I ran that one for quite a while, so I'm pretty familiar with that. Um, and to use some examples out of the Hornady range, Rusty, the 120 grain, the 130 grain, the 140 grain, all the ELDMs,
Hmm.
and then the new Burger 153 grain long range hybrid at the end.
Yep.
Um, to be honest with you, between the 120, the 130, and the 140, out to about 750 meters,
Mhm.
there's almost no difference in wind deflection. I ran those numbers with a 10 mile an hour wind coming from 3 o'clock.
Yep.
So there's nothing to be gained, so to speak, by running the heavier projectile if you're running the shorter ranges. Um, Going back to what I said before about feeling more recoil is probably about the only thing you're gonna notice.
Mm.
And using the lighter projectiles going faster, you're going to have a little bit less elevation. So it
Yep.
gives you a little bit more margin for error if you do happen to have an unknown distance stage, or you crunch your numbers wrong or hold the wrong elevation or something along those lines, which
Yeah.
we're all pretty guilty of, I think.
Yeah.
But then once you start to stretch the legs out past a kilometre, you'll really start to notice. At 1,000 metres, the 120 grain projectiles are doing 2.4 mils for the same 10 mile an hour wind hold.
Mm-hmm.
The 130s are almost identical. Actually, they are identical, 2.4. The 140s are 2.1. So you're starting to see a bit of a difference there. And if you go up to the real heavy burgers, they're only using 1.7 mils of wind hold. So you're talking 0.7 of a mil of difference there.
Yep.
That's significant. That's at a kilometre. That's 70 centimetres, I think. If my maths isn't, that's a lot. That could be a target width.
Easily, comfortably.
Yeah, comfortably. And then you really start getting out further, and the heavier projectiles come into their own. You stretch it out to 1,500 metres,
mm-hmm. and
the heavy burgers at the same wind hold are 3 mils of wind hold. And the light 120s and 130s are up around the 4.2 to 4.3 mils of wind. So you're now talking getting over a metre, well over a metre of difference.
Yep.
That's probably getting towards the range where someone that can call the wind reasonably well could actually make that wind call well. That'll make a difference rather than at a kilometre. I don't think many people would be able to tell the difference between a 0.2 and a 0.3 mil wind hold. It'd be pretty difficult. You'd be pretty good if you could.
Yeah.
But there's really some numbers you can start to see some real big improvements.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. So what and in terms of shape or design of projectiles, what are you favouring for the PRS sort of stuff you're doing?
I've been running hybrids for quite some time, burger hybrids.
Mm-hmm.
They've got that the tangent and the secant design sort of in one, so they're a bit more forgiving for your bullet jump.
Yep.
That sort of style. I think the Hornady ELDMs are similar.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit more forgiving with jump to the lands and that sort of stuff. That's generally what I'm looking for.
Yep.
If you're running like a burger VLD, they can be really sensitive to bullet jump.
Sure.
And over the course of a 300 round weekend, they would go from being super accurate to probably shooting 3-inch groups at 100 metres.
Yeah, right.
Because you need to at times chase the lands with those VLDs to keep them super accurate.
And are you saying so over the weekend they could drop off over 300, or is that over an extended period of time?
I've seen them drop off over that shorter period. The VLDs, they can be quite finicky. You're getting into a level of expertise that I probably don't have, but I'm talking about what I've seen.
Sure.
With guys that say a Queen shoot or something like that back
Mm-hmm.
in when I was shooting F class, they definitely see change.
Yeah. Right. Nice. And what I was going to say, and coming on to load development, because that's another big topic that I guess is certainly worth. There's always lots of questions around. Actually, before we get into that, there are a couple of questions, Plushy, we might hit up first, so we don't leave them behind. There was one here from Anthony. Anthony's just getting into reloading, and he just bought a set of dies and was reading the instructions about seeding die and crimping. Do you guys crimp, or does it depend on the projectile? Plushy, have you ever crimped around in your life?
No, I haven't. Never had the need in a bolt action rifle.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I think if you're into the semi-auto sort of space, with that constant heavy recoil, you might need to consider it. But as far as I'm concerned, no, I would never crimp something in a bolt action rifle for that traditional stuff that we're using.
The only time I've had experience with crimping in terms of rifle rounds has been in 30-30.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 30-30 has been the one that I have done, and then obviously with pistol rounds, it's commonplace. But
was it lever action 30-30 or?
Yeah.
I think that becomes a little bit more common in lever action rifles from what I understand, doesn't it? Yeah.
Because generally you've got a tube magazine, and so you've got your ammunition is bumping against each other front on, and so if you don't crimp those, you potentially, and not always, but potentially you could push that projectile back into the case more, and if that is, if it's sensitive to it, then that could see a diminish in accuracy, or at least inconsistency.
Yeah, definitely. you've got 8 or 7 or 8 or 10 rounds stacked one in front of the other rather than below each other. So you've got that 7-8 times the weight pushing against a projectile rather than just the one projectile, I guess.
Absolutely. So load development. So we're back onto load development. What's your process, or have you been through a few different processes?
I was pretty lucky actually. I was shown the ladder testing optimal barrel time or optimal charge weight from sort of early days.
Yep.
And I've sort of developed a little bit to what works for me. And I think it'd be fair to say that everybody has their own way to develop a load. And I don't think you could put 20 people in the room and you'd find 2 people that agree. But you find what works for you and go with it, I think.
Yep.
So for me, really, if I've got no experience with the caliber, I'd start with book charges, so book minimum to book maximum. So say the ADI reloading guide, if you're using ADI powder or something like that.
Yep.
I'd generally divide the minimum to maximum powder weight into about 18 or so charges, 15 to 18 charges, depending on how big it is.
Wow.
Usually that works up in about 0.3 grain increments. And I'll usually go about a grain over, but that's you need to be careful doing that. You could be over max pressure, but I'll generally go over a little bit. So I might end up with 21 or 22 charge weights in about 0.3 grain increments. So ideally, I'd head to the range with a chronograph, either a lab radar or a magnetospeed would be the only two that I'd probably recommend for doing this. The lab radar is probably the number one choice because you're not strapping anything to the barrel. You're not going to have a potential point of impact change or maybe even a change to the harmonics of the barrel or anything like that. So lab radar is probably my preferred option there. We'd set up a tall target at 500 metres, and ideally you'd have the range to yourself or out on a property or something like that, because otherwise it's not going to work out that great.
Right.
And from that point, you start at your lowest charge weight. Take your shot, and you would go and mark your shot on the paper, and then you'd obviously record your velocity, and you just work your way through the charge weight until you run out of charges. Or for me, the second I get a stiff bolt lift or a slide ejector mark or something like that on a piece of ejected brass, that's my cutoff point. I don't go any further, and you might end up with 2 or 3 or 4 rounds left over at the process that haven't been shot off. I'm not interested in how those go, really, because they're starting to become potentially, I won't say unsafe, but you're not going to run that at a match with water and potentially water in a chamber or dirt in a chamber or something like that, because you'll end up to the point where you need a hammer to open your bolt.
Yes.
We don't want to be there. So at that point, you could have 18 or so holes in a target, all marked 1 through 18 or whatever you've got. And I'll go out and grab the target and compare that to the velocity data that I've collected. And what I'm looking for are nodes. So a node is a flat spot in the velocity and a flat spot in the point of impact on the target. So you're looking for, generally you'll find 2 or 3 rounds on the target that are impacting in roughly the same horizontal plane within 500 meters. If it's within 20 or 30 millimeters of vertical, you're pretty happy. And that would hopefully correspond with a flat spot in your velocity. You might have a 5 to 10 feet per second spread over those 3 shots, and that would be an indication that you're onto a node. And that node is essentially when the barrel, the harmonic, you want to call it the vibrations in the barrel, are essentially not shaking the barrel or not vibrating the barrel as the projectile leaves. They're at a node, a happy point, basically. Sometimes you'll find 2, sometimes you'll find 3 nodes on an average barrel, depending on how hard you push it. So I'm looking for those 2 or 3 nodes or flat spots in the velocity and the point of impact. I should also say, before I've actually done that, usually I'll pick a seating depth. I'll generally start at a 20 thou jump. The jam projectiles.
Sorry, mate, we lost your audio there for a second. So you said you start with a 20 thou jump?
Yeah, just a 20 thou jump. And get the data off of that. And so you come out of that with hopefully 2 or 3 sort of charge weights in a couple of areas that you're interested in, and then I'd go away, go home, have a bit of a look at that, and pick the charge weight that's in the middle of those. To say you've got 41.2, 41.5, 41.7 that are all pretty flat on the target and pretty flat on the chronograph, I'd probably go with 41.5, and then I'd load up five rounds at 20 thou jump, 50 thou jump, 80 thou jump, and 110 thou jump. So same charge weight, and just increase the jump, and then go and shoot for groups at 100 meters, and I'm looking for the. I'll shoot all of those and looking for basically the tightest group out of those. And to be honest, the last 4 or 5 rifles that I've either built or bought, I haven't had to do much more than that. That's usually in about 30 or 40 shots. For a load development. Every now and again you got to go and tweak it a little bit, but I've not really, as I said last time I was on the show, I'm looking for half inch and under at 100 meters. And if I've got my half inch or under, I stop looking. Yep. With the so far as the 20, 50, 80 thou jump, etc., it's important to know. Say it shoots really well at 20 thou jump. It's important to know what it does at 50 thou jump, because at some point in the rifle's life, you're going to be jumping your projectiles 50 thou if you haven't moved your seating depths.
Yep.
So it is important to shoot those at different seating depths to see what it's going to do. Gives you a bit of an indication. You're looking for something as close to the middle of that sort of range where it's got the most either side. Gives you a bit more wiggle room, I suppose you'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good. How many do you count as a group? How many shots are you referring to?
Generally, 5-shot groups are a minimum. If I'm the last one I did for my 6mm Creed, I actually went with 10-shot groups.
Okay.
It's not really necessary, but a PRS match, generally the shots are the stage is the 10-shot minimum, and I'm looking to make sure I get a nice consistent grouping of 10 shots. I don't want 5 good shots and then it starts stringing or something like that as it heats up. So I'm sort of for the last time I did it, I moved to 10-shot groups. But yeah, I've done in the past 5-shot groups has worked perfectly fine. Okay.
You're right. It's good. Yeah, a lot of guys obviously talk about going to 3-shot groups or 5-shot groups or 10-shot groups, and they're always interesting. I used to always shoot 4-shot groups, but I don't know if you do this. I was taught this trick a long time ago when this guy would only shoot. He'd shoot 5-shot groups, but he would shoot the first 2, and if the second shot went beyond what he was looking for, he stopped and would move on to the next load, unless he thought he pulled the shot or anything on those lines to save ammo.
Yeah, I was just thinking that you'd have to be very confident that you pulled a decent shot to move on to the next one after that. Personally, I would 5 or 5 shots. You could well see 4 in the almost one hole and one outlier. That could be an issue with your scales or seating tension or along those lines as well. So
yeah,
I wouldn't necessarily stop at 2. I'd fire the 5 and just make sure that wasn't an outlier of some description.
Yeah, absolutely, because there are other factors that could be contributing, and if you get 4 through the same hole and one goes out, there may not be just the fact that it's a poor load. There may be something else. So that's interesting.
Absolutely. I mean, I know when I did load dev on my 6mm Krieg recently, I couldn't actually get a target out past 100 meters because the club was busy that day, and
right.
et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So I actually did my load dev at 100 meters, and I watched the first 4 shots go through the same hole, and they were on a very tight node of the velocity.
Yep.
And I went through the rest of the test and watched where the groups were going and sort of plotted it out because I couldn't go out there and mark them.
Yep.
But that was enough for me to see. I've seen a flat spot in the velocity. I've seen 4 bullets go through the same hole. I was pretty sold on that after 4 shots, to be honest.
Okay. All right, I'm going to delve back into a few questions before we move on here, Plushy. Let's see. Do you use actual BCs in your calculations as in tested ones or the advertised numbers? What do you normally
I
do?
think that depends on which manufacturer you're talking about.
Yeah,
I think we know that some are more truthful than others.
this is true.
But I generally go with the advertised unless I know different.
Mm. Yeah, well,
I haven't
sometimes
really
there's
got.
not.
I haven't really got. If I've got, yeah, if Brian Litz measured it and advertised it, I'd use it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't. Yeah, and if there's nothing else to go on, use the advertised, and then you can correct later on.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's fair because yeah, if there's third party information out there, then definitely either use it or take it into consideration. And if there isn't, you do what you can. That's all you've got. But if you'd chosen this projectile and you'd actually gone down the path of deciding load and all that sort of thing, I would test it to confirm those BCs or adjust and tweak those BCs. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. I think unless you've got your twist rate horribly wrong or something like that, your BC might change by 1%. Shout out to Greg. But
Yep.
it's not going to change. It's not going to change 10%.
Sure.
You're talking very, very small tweaks. And I don't think that wouldn't affect my choice of projectile or projectile weight significantly.
We talked about, I guess we sort of covered on this, do you look for nodes, SDs or extreme spreads for accuracy or just tight groups or all of the above? You're a bit of all of the above, aren't you?
Yeah, look, my theory on SD is single digits is good enough when we're shooting, 700-800 meters and under.
Yep.
If we start shooting at a mile, I'll be looking for sub 5.
Got it.
But I just don't think that the ranges we shoot at the moment, it's not required. The targets are a lot more generous than an extra 5 feet per second. They're going to make that much of a difference.
Got it. Have you had any experience with barrel tuners at all?
I've got one on a 308.
Okay.
And yeah, I don't know. Well, I understand the science. You're moving weight either forward or back of the end of the barrel to adjust the harmonics. So the potential is there. Rather than tuning your load, you tune the weight on your barrel to try and tighten the groups up if you can.
Absolutely. I'm just dropping stuff over here. Sorry.
I haven't seen a barrel tuner and muzzle brake all in the same one yet, so I'm probably not going to go in that direction anytime soon.
Got it. Okay. Right, I was talking about crimping, following up on the information there. Have you tried the 10-round load development ladder test? I'm assuming this is the Saddeley method. No,
I haven't actually. I'd be keen to hear about it.
Yeah, it's basically it's nothing to do with where the bullet goes. It's all about velocity, and it's an initial. It's a quick 10 rounds of different powder weights, and it gives you an indication of the flat spot idea. And so what you're doing is to try and find multiple shots and see where that flat spot, where the velocity doesn't change a lot over a couple of shots. And that's the idea behind it. It's not comprehensive. It'll get you going and certainly get you down that path. One thing that I see guys coming unstuck with it, Scott Saddeley, who I've been fortunate enough to meet and spend a little bit of time with, he is an extremely experienced reloader. And it's the type of test that can go sideways super quick if you are not a very good, consistent, reliable reloader, because you only get one shot at each powder weight. So you need to be 100% sure that is the correct powder weight that you've entered there. Obviously, having groups allows you to build in this factor of looking for the average, looking for consistency. Whereas you only get one shot, you want to make sure that is consistent. I've seen results of guys who have done the 10-round ladder test, and the data is all over the shop, and you're like, well, I think that's a sign of your reloading, and because guys think, 10, that's great. That doesn't sound like very hard work. I'll do that, but you've got to be super proficient with your reloading. So that's the only sort of caveat I'll say. I think for the guys who understand its limits and understand what it's there for and can reload well, get good results out of it.
Yeah, completely agree. I've actually done a similar method without intending to.
Okay.
Before Bucking last year, I swapped projectiles.
Yeah.
And I didn't have the opportunity to go to the range. And I literally strapped my magneto speed on the end of the rifle and shot it into the dirt 15 times and looked for the flat spots in the velocity, and then loaded up some rounds and took them out to the range. Shot 3 groups, and one of them was fantastic, and that was low development done.
Yeah, right. That's it. I had a 22 to 50. I must have hit the lottery with my old 22 to 50 in a Remington 700, because I chose a load, put it in the gun. This is when I first learned to reload. Shot it, and it was shooting the best I'd ever shot. And I went, oh, it was half minute or something like this back when I learned to reload. I went, oh, that's great. I'll just run with that. And then I bought a second 22 to 50, a year later or whatever it is, and went, oh, I'll try the same load. And it was not a hot load. It was a sort of medium ballpark in there. So I tried it in the new gun, and it shot under half inch. I went, okay, I'll just stay with that. I then got my original gun rebarreled, and so I tried it, in the new barrel under a third of an inch, and I went, I'm going to write this load down, because whatever I'm doing here, this is working. And it killed a lot of foxes. We'll put it that way. All right, now
I've got a 243 that does something similar.
Yeah,
it shoots 1 inch groups at 100 meters.
Yeah,
and it doesn't matter if you put 42 grains or 44 grains of powder in it.
Yeah.
It won't shoot any. I've never found a load that shoots any better than an inch, and it's very, very rare to find one that shoots worse than an inch and a half. And it's just, it's been incredibly frustrating, because I've never got it to shoot super accurate. But it's also super easy, because I can throw the powder, and load and go, and it's still an accurate enough rifle to go and shoot some foxes with.
Got it. Yeah, okay, that's it. Well, that's the thing is it's about what you're doing with it, and if you're shooting foxes with it, it's going to be ample. That's going to be fine. All right, Edric has a question. How many rounds do you like to run through before starting load development to let muzzle velocity stabilize? What's your experience with this?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. I know a lot of people will just put 100 to 120 rounds down the barrel without even worrying about load development. Just go do some training, just pick a load that they think is going to work, and just go shoot some barricades or something like that, and get something productive out of your 120 rounds. I've been putting my break-in procedure is clean the barrel, shoot 2 or 3 rounds, clean the barrel, and then start shooting. I don't go crazy with break-in. So after about 5 shots, I'm starting my ladder test. So by 20 to 25 shots, I've done my ladder test, and by 35 to 40 shots down the barrel, I've hopefully worked on a load. Now, the most important thing to do here is to write down the velocity of your load that works. And after somewhere between 100 and 300 rounds, depending on the barrel, you're going to get a speed jump. And in every time that it's happened, if I slow it back down to the velocity that I found the groups were working, was getting good groups at, it went back to doing exactly what it was supposed to.
Okay.
So I haven't worried too much about getting that 100, 150 rounds down the tube and then doing load development. I haven't bothered.
Yeah, I've got very limited experience in this, but I can talk about the very limited experience. I had 2 guns, both 6.5 Creedmoors, a Ticker that was on loan, and a Ruger that I bought many years ago. That was the come and try type gun. And so when I got both of them separate times, I thought, I'm going to let's see what we can do here to try this out. So 200 rounds through each, and factory ammo, so it was somewhat consistent, and went out and basically just shot, sighted it in, did all that sort of stuff, had a bit of a play with it, getting to know it. I did videos and bits and pieces on them, I think. And so, but I chronographed the first 10 shots, and then the 191 through to the 200th shot, all the same pack of ammo, and there was no noticeable difference in velocity in that experience, and that was across 2 guns. That is far from comprehensive. I would not take that as, because there are other guys I know who are super experienced, and they do note that they have had a velocity jump, and so that's the only thing I can point to is those 2 guns, and go, Yeah, there wasn't in that, but I'm again with the 6GT that I'm running, I intend to do the same thing and figure just every barrel I go through, I'll do the same thing and see what happens, see what changes, because I don't think the sample size for me is enough to convince me one way or the other.
Absolutely. I think I couldn't tell you the science behind it, but I think there's a difference between hammer forged barrels, which you're going to see on factory rifles often enough, and then you cut and your button rifle barrels.
Yep.
I think there's a difference between those two with the velocity jump. I could be wrong here, but I vaguely remember seeing something written up about that some time ago.
Yeah, I don't think that the Ticker or the Ruger do hammer forged barrels, but I'm pretty sure Ticker don't.
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
happy to
They wouldn't
correct them
surprise me
on
if they're button rifled. Yeah,
either of those, but I think they're button. But someone will tell us we're wrong, which I'm totally okay with, because I'm not
that's the
saying
beauty of the internet.
not saying I know, actually know. So no claims
Yeah.
there. Steve points out that the Ballistics publish actual tested BCs for mini brands. Yeah, which we're talking about lids they're doing. So
That's
do
that's
we?
very much my go-to as well.
Yeah, absolutely. If the data's there and available, certainly we'll go to it for correct BCs. Do we cover Edric's question? How many rounds do you like to run through before starting to load events? So you go straight into it, but then you monitor it, and which I think is a sensible way to do it, is to get stuck into it and then tweak from there, because it's usually not too much of a difference either side.
Yeah, definitely. I think if you're consistency is the name of the game, really.
Yeah.
And if you're putting a barrel a season on, or hopefully not two barrels a season, but that might happen. If you're using the same barrel, the same reamer, the same brass, the same projectiles,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say your load's going to be exactly the same, but it's going to be within probably 0.3 or zero point 0.4 of a grain.
Okay.
So you might be able to short circuit your ladder test a little bit on a rebarrel with the same components.
Mm-hmm.
And once you've done it often enough, you'll start to see particular barrels or particular chamberings like particular velocities.
Yep.
And you can also tune by that.
Got it. Having some confirmation in that you that the Ticker barrels are hammer forged.
Oh, there you go.
Thank you for confirming that. And it looks like Ruger may actually be as well. So yeah, excellent. Good to know. Good to know. See, fact checking. I love it. It's great, because then we put out the correct information rather than just whatever we feel like saying. It's a joy of doing this live. All right. Now I was going to. Are you guys ready for the product placement? Because this is relevant in load development. I don't know if you guys or if Plushy you've come across this, but it's from one of the guys at our club. It's the Load Right. I'll get this correct. The Load Right load development kit. And so this is the sponsor for the particular show, but this little kit here that you can get comes with 100 of these little tubes. And so the idea is that you will load up your 6.5 Creedmoor or whatever with 40 grain. It's been a while since I load Creedmoor. With X amount of grains, whatever your base load is. And then you put caps on them. So you've got these little caps that you put in your cases, and that'll obviously keep your powder in there and not spilling out or anything. And then you head down to the range or wherever it is that you get to shoot. And in these little tubes, you've charged up a grain, half a grain, 0.2 of a grain, whatever it is that you need, the combination over these 100 tubes that'll sit in this tray, and you can put your little stickers on them to say the green ones are 1 grain and the blue ones are a half grain or whatever it might be. And you can then, rather than doing it in the manner where you would load up, 5 of each or 10 of each or whatever it is that you're doing back at home, get there, shoot 2 and be like, well, that was that was no good, or whatever it may be. You can actually go out there and sort of work your way up in loads, and then go, oh, there's some promise at this one. I might be on a node here. Well, you grab a few of these, top it back up to wherever it was, and carry on range without your powder blowing everywhere, without having to take scales on the range to try and find power if you need to. Steve Passfield is the man behind these, and he's, as you would know, Plushy, he's a bit of a smart dude, despite his haircut.
Yep.
He sort of saw a need for that to be able to actually load on the range without having to worry about it. So if you've got like an inline seater or whatever sort of press you need, they work really, really well. So wanted to tell you guys about those because I just picked them up whatever day it was, and they come in all sorts of sizes. You can get kits and different caps and all that sort of stuff, and they're about $35 for a set. So they're plus less 5%, of course, because you can buy them through Projectile Warehouse using the code IDLive5. But they're a cool little kit if you set up to be able to do that.
That's a really, really good idea, Rusty. It's pretty frustrating being at the range when you think you're onto something, and then you don't have that next charge weight or something along those lines, or that just to confirm what you think you're seeing, and then you got to go home and do it all again. So it's a brilliant idea for the sake of $35.
Yeah. Or if you, I've seen, and obviously it's all designed out of experience and Steve's experience and people around him who've had issues, and so you're there and you're on 3 shots in, you're like, this is really good group, and then your next 2 go off the sides, and you're like, now I don't know, was that me? Was it not a good group? Okay, I'll just load 2 more. Take me out of the equation, get someone else to shoot these, whatever it might be, you've got the ability to respond immediately. So
that's really, really good, because if you think about it, say you've loaded 42 grains in all of your cases or all of your charges there, you could load 10.1s, 10.2s, 10.3s, and you can use your 0.1s, or if you want some 0.3s, you can put some 0.1s and 0.2s to make 0.3s, and the options are really, really not unlimited, but you've got a huge amount of options there to make up that additional charge weight if you need to.
Absolutely. So I'm telling you guys about this because I like this, and I was fortunate enough to be involved when Steve was developing it, because I think it really, for many people, it's a need that they didn't realise there was a solution for, but people get frustrated by that process. So anyway, just thought we'd mention that, and it seemed really relevant to tonight's topic as we go along. Now we've got a few more questions about primers actually in load development. Do you factor in primers in your load development, or do you just get what's available, or do they change things much? What do you think?
I've been shooting CCI, either the BR2s or the BR4s exclusively, probably for 10 plus years.
Okay.
And I use in current stuff, I'm using the BR4s, the small primer. And I've not seen any reason to change them at the moment. Perhaps if you tried everything, you tried your ladder test and you weren't really seeing anything, or you'd done your ladder test and you changed your seating depth and you just couldn't get that group size down, you might consider swapping primers. But that wouldn't be my first go-to. I'd be keeping it consistent and looking to that later on if it's not working for you.
Absolutely. I think the primers are something that they often will make little difference, but they can make a big difference because they ignite differently, or how they go about it. And so people sort of dismiss them as no big deal, and then they change them, and things go south. And then others have no issue, but I would treat it as any other change to your load, particularly because we're chasing, in this world, we're chasing significant accuracy. Anything you do that's inconsistent could be a problem. If you were trying to hit minute of pig at 50 meters, as long as your pressures are going to be okay, it's probably no big deal to where it's going to go in the pig.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing for everyone to remember is, if you're changing something, only change one thing at a time. Never change more than one thing at a time, because if it works or it doesn't work, you won't know which thing it was that did or didn't work for you.
Yep.
It can be a painful process, but you don't want to rush it and change too many things, and you've got no idea where you're at, basically.
Absolutely. Paul's got a question about 6 and 6.5s. What primer size would you prefer to use?
I jumped over to small rifle primer when I got on the 6.5 Creedmoor bandwagon.
Yep.
Does it offer anything else? Maybe not. But I used to shoot a 284.
Yep.
And I used to have dramas after 6 or 8 firings. The primer pockets would start to get a bit loose. They were a large rifle primer.
Sure.
Now the 284 has a 308 size case head, but the actual case diameter itself is larger. So you've got a larger case diameter and a smaller case head.
Yes.
And they were a little bit susceptible to to get loose primer pockets. When you're paying, $2.50 a piece of brass, that kind of sucks. So I made the choice to go to small rifle primers, but I haven't seen any evidence really in the 6.5 Creed to say that it's required.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, I think that the general consensus. But general consensus is sometimes a found on opinion, not so much extensive testing. But the idea being that it's a less significant disruption to the case when it goes off. But I haven't compared the two against each other enough to say the same with you. I think there's information out there, and it's not something I've tested enough to know.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. Right. Hammer Forge, yes, that's right. This is a really good thought question here. Not question from Butters, he knows the answer, but he's asking you, Plushy, are you going to change your load when visiting Butters later this year for a PRS match, assuming that we can shoot the PRS match in Darwin? How does temperature, significant temperature, affect what's happening, and how can you counteract that with your loads?
This ties back into what I was saying before about there could be 2 or 3 velocity nodes. If you elect to run the upper velocity node and you develop that load in Adelaide in winter, and then you head to Darwin, it's probably not going to be a fun time for you. They're going to be going faster. You're probably going to have stiff bolt lifts and all sorts of stuff. So to answer Butter's question, I'm actually running on the lowest node. So the new rifle I put together, it's actually got a 27-inch barrel, and I'm running 40 grains of powder in a 6mm Creed, which is right on the minimum, and I'm getting close to 3,100 feet per second out of that. So to answer Butter's question, no, I won't be. I don't think I'll need to, because I'm running the lowest velocity node on that rifle.
Yep.
But if I was running something in the upper node, I would definitely consider dropping back to a lower, slower node, just to account for the pressure increase that you're going to get in the hotter weather.
Because what some people may not know is powder burns differently. You up your pressure in the heat generally, and we used to test this when we were running our week-long courses, and you would put the ammo into a bag, put that in the freezer, put it in water, and then put that in the freezer, and then put the ammo into a bag and put it into hot water. All right, so the ammo is protected from the element, but it still retains the heat or the cold. And then we would get everything ready, get the gun lined up, get the chronograph on, and then I would run the ammo out to the person. We'd run through the 5 rounds or however many it was, and we'd take a laser measurement of the ammo and look at the velocity, and then we would do the same for the hot ammo, and you would be able to calculate. It's not a linear path, but it's you're able to sort of calculate and take some measurements along that line to simulate, being in somewhere like Darwin or being in Victoria, where it's high country, where it's really could be quite cold. You could be around snow, or you've got your ammo on the dash on a cold night, but it's sitting on top of the heater, which is not a great way to do it. But you have your ammo, and it was amazing to see how significant difference you would see in that velocity. And of course, start pushing your velocity one way or the other, and you could fall off nodes very easily. We were seeing these guys miss targets between the cold ammo, the air temperature, the room temperature, but air temperature ammo, and the hot ammo. And that was the only thing that was different. Now, given they were relatively small targets, but that was enough to throw them off. So it can and does make a big difference when you're doing that. Not to mention, obviously, the effect that will have on your in-flight ballistics that will change because of the atmosphere that you're in and the other factors in that. So it's a consideration. But has a follow up here: is that, are you confident you'll stay within that node? Because obviously the node has an amount of a buffer, and if you are on the lower end of that node, as it gets warmer, you potentially stay within that. But if it gets colder, you may fall off one end or whatever it might be.
That's a really good question. I haven't actually shot in Darwin before.
Yep.
I've not loaded up there, so this is going to be new for me.
Mm-hmm.
What I would, I've given it some thought though, and what I would probably do, I've got about a good zero point 0.6 grain window of my node that they're all shooting relatively flat. What I think I'll do is drop back about 0.2, 0.3 grains to the lower end of that node.
Yep.
And then hopefully with a bit of temperature increase and whatnot, it pushes me up a little bit, but I'm still within that node. I could be totally wrong, but that was sort of my plan. Yeah. That's the theory.
I like it. And a lot of bench rest guys, I used to work with a guy who was a very experienced bench rest shooter, and they will commonly load on the range, and they will load per conditions. And Steve points out that some powders are more sensitive than others, and ADI, generally speaking, is fairly good. But if you were to run those same tests we were running on some of the other less sensitive or more sensitive powders, you would see a much bigger variation in those velocities. I know Butter's
I don't have
sorry, mate.
No, you're right. Kick on, Russell.
I know Butters got caught at a Mildura PRS coming down and experiencing a significant shift in the environment that he was in, and how that had an impact on his loads.
Yep, I've certainly seen that even in South Australian shooting, where I've developed a load in winter, and as you start coming through into summer, the groups start opening up, and you need to go back and take a look at it and see what's going on. And generally, it's going faster than what you expected. And you take a bit of powder out and slide back down again, and you're back where you need to be.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things where knowledge is key, because if you don't know that that's happening, you can get frustrated with what the gun's doing, or I'm not shooting well, or what's happening here. And I've seen actually the clearest example of that knowledge being very useful that I remember seeing with a guy who's a very very competent shooter, would often do very well at the little practical matches we would run from time to time. And I remember he came out on a course, and we were talking about him. We're way off topic now, but we're talking about environmentals, and we started running. We used to have a worksheet that you would run through, and you would use your data, and there was given scenarios that you would punch in the data of this humidity, this density, altitude, etc., etc. You put all your variables in, and it would spit out your you'd write down your drop, and then you change your variables, write down your drop, and guys over a period of time would start seeing, wow, this changes significantly as these environmentals fluctuate. And he was seeing with his load at his 800, 900, 1,000 meter shots, he just stopped for a moment and looked at me. He's like, so this is why I can hit in the morning and can't hit in the afternoon, because it was shifting him off. The temperature warming up of where he was shooting was shifting him. It was small targets, but it was enough that he would shift off target over the course of shooting at 7 in the morning through to 3 in the afternoon. And he was just dumbfounded and started. I think he got himself a Kestrel and started hitting targets all the time. It was wonderful to see that problem solved, but amazing to see that his consistency in that, but just didn't know what was happening. He thought he was. I must say, he thought he was getting tired and fatiguing over the day, and therefore just not concentrating as much.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, like I say, knowledge is power. I was just thinking, I know over at Buchan last year, everyone gets their matchbooks at a PRS match, and they want to sit down and read it, and then they go back through and start putting in their drops and stuff like that. And as much as I wanted to, it was a pleasant 21 or 22 degrees in the afternoon, and knowing full well that it's probably going to be -1 or. I was like, I'm just going to wait and pull the Kestrel out. I mean, we're not talking massive differences there. Like, over 500 meters, it might be 0.1.
Yeah.
Maybe 0.2. Yep. It's not massive, but I know I certainly made a conscious effort to resist the urge to write down all your dopes and that sort of stuff, just in case of that exact thing.
Absolutely. Jimmy's got a question here, which I think is a really good question. Again, not knowledge being power. Do you develop a load for certain brass or change it for different brands of brass? And does it make any difference, Plushy?
Okay. I wouldn't interchange different brands of brass with the same load and even think that it's going to shoot the same.
Yep.
They're going to be completely. You could have an internal case volume difference of 2 grains with the same caliber piece of brass in Hornady versus Lepore or something. So it's going to completely change your pressure, should change your velocity and everything. So
Yeah.
To answer Jimmy's question, I develop a load for a certain type, brand, whatever you want to call it, of brass. And if I was to swap brass to a different type, I would restart the load development process.
Absolutely. There's a question there. Conservative Sniper Hunter has asked, are any PRS shooters using Steve Hertz bullets in competition? Not in any significant way that we've seen, but what Steve has done, if you've caught, this would be the first time he was on the show, he has now released sort of packets of 500 that are target projectiles that are, if you buy it in 500, it's like 40% off retail. And because of that, I think we will certainly see a lot more guys at least give it a go. And I know a few guys are starting to try the outer edge projectiles more and more, and are liking what they're seeing, which is excellent in the last few weeks that I've been some last month or two, which is good. And I know there's more sitting there waiting to go to the range to test them out, and I think the product's excellent and the support is second to none. And I think we will see more and more. If not, I will definitely be doing it. That's my plan with the GT, is to run some Australian-made projectiles in there.
I'm in much the same position actually. I was stalking your web page, Projectile Warehouse, the other week, and I noticed they were 40% off. And I've been meaning to ask you, was that a special or is that going to be normal for the 500 piece boxes? Because that was affordable.
Yeah,
and it caught my interest, and I'm probably going to give that a go if that's a regular price.
Yeah, well, if we give the shout out now to Steve, so Steve and I have been talking for a number of months at gun shows and bits and pieces we've been doing, but he's really driven to get into that market. And one of the big challenges was we're shooting 500 meters. It needs to be accurate, but Steve's stuff is super accurate. But there's that balancing point of well, super accurate's excellent, but spending twice as much or an extra 50% on projectiles is really hard to justify when you might go through 250 in a weekend. And so he's worked hard to bring his costs down to be able to get it to consumers at a better rate, to make it much more competitive in that market. And I think he has done that, and hats off to him. But that price is the standard price. That is what they're going to be going. It only shows the percentage off based on what they would be at a retail level if you bought a 50 pack, and that's where the real advantage is buying the larger amount. So maybe buy a 50 pack to try them out, but 500 and that. Steve's the type of bloke that'll work with you to get them running. Absolutely.
Yeah, well, when I can pick up my tripod, Rusty, I'm probably going to pick up a box of 500, because if that's and Steve's just confirmed that's the regular price.
Yep.
I'm more than willing to part with some money and give that a go.
Yeah, I think they're well worthwhile. Absolutely. So I look forward to getting some brass so I can give them a go. So yeah, shout out. And I love to. And the reason I'm talking about this so much is because I love to see someone like an Australian business recognise that, adapt, and develop something and work to go right. That's where we need to be. Let's see what we can do to get there. And I'm looking forward to them being much more present in the series in the future, because I think that they make an excellent product, and that has been proven time and time again. And there was one. By the way, I'm not saying that they're not worth more money than the others. I believe they are, but people have a finite amount of money when they go into a match like that, and it's a factor. So I've just taken one factor out of the equation.
Yeah, absolutely. And another shout out to Australian barrel maker, Swan Barrels.
Mm-hmm.
I recently jumped on board. I bought one of their barrels, and I'm blown away by how it shoots. I've run pretty much exclusively Krieger barrels up until that point, and I had some trouble getting the one I wanted, and Swan were able to supply one within a few weeks.
Yeah.
to the spec I wanted, and it's been fantastic. So I can't
Fantastic.
back up the use Australian made enough. So
Yeah.
to use the projectiles from Steve seems like a
Good
good idea as
combination.
well.
Yeah, absolutely. I hear you get a bonus 1% BC by running them in a swan barrel.
Really? Oh, that's pretty good.
Not entirely sure that's 100% true, but we'll do some testing on that and we'll see how we go.
There's some Australian made brass out there too, isn't there? That might give you another 1% increase in BC.
That's right. That's the plan. That's the plan. Australian made powder, of course. Also, you know what Australian made is? What else is Australian made, Plushy? The Long Gun Project is
like
Australian made.
Oh,
And I want to
out.
thank, shout out to the 4 people that have subscribed while we've been talking. But if you haven't yet, and you really should, and we're about to wrap up, so you've got, now you can go spend the next 4 hours or something watching some videos from the Long Gun Project, and go and check out Ben's channel, Ben Jarrett's channel, who's been working on this show in the background, pretty much within a couple of weeks of this show starting. So a bit of a shout out to him to say thank you so much, and go and subscribe to his channel. Really want to see, his videos deserve a lot more views than they're getting, and we really want to see him push 1,000 subscribers, because then he gets this community channel app and he gets a few other bits and pieces on YouTube. So I'm looking forward to him hitting that milestone, and if you guys like what he gets up to, get into it. The brand of Projectile EL was Outer Edge Projectiles. You can find them on Projectile Warehouse, who was the sponsor of this show, and you can save 5% off the Outer Edge Projectiles on top of that 40% discount by using the code IDLIVE5. IDLIVE with the number 5 on the end. All right, Plushy, I think we're about wrapped up now. Obviously the Load Right, another Australian company. We're full of innovation here in Australia. It's wonderful to see. But thank you for your time. Always good to pinch your knowledge. And I've got no abusive songs for you. I'm sorry, mate. But what I do probably have for you is I'm meant to have you a tripod this weekend. So I'll let you know when that comes in. And look forward to showing everyone those tripods. That'd be good.
No, looking forward to it, mate. Thanks for having me. Appreciate your time again, and once again appreciate what you're doing for everybody. Keeps everyone sane in this time of insanity.
Yeah, not wrong. Oh, awesome, and hopefully we'll be out to see you at the range very soon.